What's going on, Shield Brothers and Shield Maidens? This is True for Shield's Rest, and today we're talking Daggerheart Adversary Breakdown as well as encounter building. So let's get into it. So first, let's start off with essentially a comparison and the premise of encounters. What are you looking at when it comes to Daggerheart, right? So to start off with D&D, we all kind of know D&D for the CR rating, and it was kind of a failed system, but once you kind of understood it, it sort of made sense. And then there stupid calculations of the XPs. I didn't enjoy that nearly as much. I just kind of built with what made sense to me at the time, and that's kind of my main approach to how I build encounters now. Regardless of what system, I just go with what makes sense. But again, it's probably easier just using the encounters, and especially with Daggerheart, so much easier, okay? So Genesis kind of started me off with understanding that if you use the same number of adversaries equal to your PCs, you're going to have an easy time. Okay. Now, Daggerheart takes a page out of that book and brings it into this system and does it really well. It does it just as well as Genesis, if not a little more streamlined, particularly because of the way the adversary stat block breaks down. I think it's actually rather streamlined and really nice and simple. Okay. This just kind of reminds me of a Genesis light system. So if you got that background like I do for the Genesis system, this is going to be an easy transition for you guys. Especially if you need something a little bit simpler for your players to utilize, this is going to be great. So getting into the way encounters are built within Daggerheart, it's the same way as Genesis, where you go based off of the number of your party. It's very much so centered around creating a group encounter, making sure that you have a certain number of minions and a certain number of certain types of adversaries, as well as building out with some kind of more epic foes. Whereas in D&D, you didn't really get that. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't really have that at your disposal. They didn't really talk about it like that, and you kind of had to gain that through experience. With this, breaks it down really nice and simple. But first, let's start off with the adversary stat block breakdown, because once you understand that, you're going to understand how to build these encounters really well, and you're going to understand where the power comes from for these adversaries and why certain encounters are going to feel more deadly than others. Okay, so adversary breakdown. So let's start off with the Jagged Knife Bandit. Super straightforward here. So the Jagged Knife Bandit is going to be considered a standard type adversary. If you look at the different types of adversaries, you're going to see that this breaks down really nicely, because you can almost look at the tier and the type and build an encounter almost completely off of that and really hit the mark almost every single time, if I'm being honest. I've done that a few times and it has worked out extremely well. So just saying. So the tier equates to the party's level. So if you have a party that's level 1, they're going to be tier 1. If you have a party that's level 2 to level 4, they're going to be tier 2. And really and truly, if you just look at the tiers of when your players are going to level up, that equates to the tiers that your adversaries need to be at in order to create a very much so on par sort of encounter. Okay, so if you're going to build an easy encounter, you're going to need to make sure that it's at the right tier. Otherwise, it's going to be way too easy. Okay, or if you're going to build an easy encounter that's at the wrong tier, say like a tier 3 easy encounter, is going to be a rather challenging encounter for your party. So you got to keep that in mind when you're looking at these adversaries. Okay, so tier 1 standard is what we have with the Jagged Knife Bandit. We also have, going with this little part of it, your difficulty of 12, your attack modifier of +1, as well as your dagger's melee attack, melee range, okay, of being 2d6 +3. There we are. That is as straightforward gets. Now, that's the basic side. Now, you can, of course, see the hit points. You can see the major and severe damage thresholds, as well as the stress. Gotcha. So the deadliness does not come from the Jagged Knife Bandit's features, okay? Having Climber as a passive and then having From Above as an action, it's not that great. It's supposed to encourage you, though, to utilize these adversaries in a specific way. It's trying to impart upon you the tactics that are involved. So, for instance, if you bring in a Jagged Knife Hexer, you're going to be dealing with a vastly different stat block in the way of their features. So their features of Curse and Chaotic Flux, it's obviously a support type adversary. You can see that already. But when you look at its features, it fully supports that support side of the adversary, okay? It's meant to be that person in the back casting from behind, okay? So when you're building your encounters, you have what's called easy, standard, challenging, and climactic, okay? Your easy encounter is going to look something like 3 jagged knife bandits and a jagged knife hexer going against your 4 PCs. Or if you have 3 PCs, do 2 jagged knife bandits and 1 hexer. There you go. Now, it's going to feel a little weak, but I mean, this is an easy encounter. It's meant to be weak. It's meant to be easy for your party. This is when you're trying to get your party to have a few wins in early on before they start to get into some of those more challenging and rather climactic sort of encounters, okay? Now, getting into a standard encounter would look more like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and use a solo type. Or you can start using some minions. So let's say about 4 minions because of your 4 party members. And then you're going to use like 2 to 3 adversaries of a different type, like bruisers or supports or even standards. Standards are fine to use here, as well as like ranged attackers, okay? Again, learn the stat block. Like I said, get into the stat block and understand what you're working with, and then understand what their tactics are going to be. But realize that this is going to be pretty straightforward. So I find that the features actually support the tactics really well for the adversaries, and makes it really easy when I'm in the moment, actually in the fight, trying to figure out what I'm trying to do, especially when a party member fails or they roll with fear. That is one of those moments where it's like, okay, it's now back to me. What is this guy doing? You know, it should feel natural, okay? And that's what I like about these adversaries is they feel natural. They've put a lot of good work into them, and I appreciate that. So now getting into a challenging sort of encounter, the challenging encounter looks more like a leader and a bunch of minions, okay? Or utilizing not only a solo type and maybe like a few other adversaries, or you can kind of get into utilizing minions that are equal to the party size as well as adversaries equal to the party size. So that would mean like 4 minions plus 4 standard types plus 4 bruisers, or, you know, mix and match, obviously. Make it work, you know, make it interesting. Get it to be a little more dynamic, you know? Now, the minions, I will say, are underwhelming, and that's exactly what they're supposed to be. But when it comes to creating an encounter, use minion groups. So if I'm going to have, let's say, 3 minion groups of 3, so 3 minions in each minion group, all of a sudden that becomes a lot more challenging with the 1 hexer and maybe 2 bruisers that are in the back, where the bruisers are now leading the minions into the fight, and it's going to be chaos for your 4 party members. So think of it like that, you know? That's a good way to kind of build out a good challenging sort of encounter, okay? Now, climactic. Climactic is going to be one of those that you're going to have to get a little bit of practice in, and you're going to need to really prep for. And it's supposed to be climactic. You're supposed to prep for this thing, right? So do it and do it well. So the way you build a climactic encounter is you're going to be dealing with definitely a solo type or a leader. Have a number of minions that is equal to 1.5 times the size of the party. And then bring in the same number of adversaries as the party. You see how the equations start to work out and how it's just kind of really straightforward and easy? Like I said, it's simple. Once you understand it, super simple. Like to the point where you're like, man, I thought it would be more complicated than this. And I'm so glad that it isn't, because in the moment, you want to be able to build these encounters pretty quickly, you know? I want to be able to do it while I'm in the bathroom when I need to take a second because the party decided to do something crazy. I want to be able to go into the bathroom or whatever real quick and just be able to look through and go, okay, I like that adversary, and that one. Fantastic. Built, done, let's go. And then all of a sudden it feels like I was ready for them, even though I wasn't. You know what I mean? So it is supposed to enhance your ability as a GM to kind of lean into that narrative improv that you're going to be doing a lot of, and to do so without putting a ton of thought into it and still make it make sense in the end. So that's what I love about that. And again, you're going to need to rethink how you look at minions, because it's okay to bring what they're saying, which is 1.5 times. So you'd bring in six minions plus the adversaries plus the solo and or leader for that climactic encounter. But I can almost guarantee you that your party's going to rip through that. Okay, pretty easily. It's going to feel more like a challenging encounter and not really climactic. Okay, which is why I'm saying add in minion groups equal to the party's size rather than do the 1.5 times, and all of a sudden it's going to feel just about right. Okay, but this all comes with experience. It all takes time to understand. So while you're giving your party wins with some easy and standard encounters, you're gaining experience trying to understand how do you build better encounters. So really look at the adversaries and then look how you can kind of tweak them a little bit. Look at some of the rules for how do you up the tier on, say, a jagged knife bandit, and you want to up the tier to like maybe a tier 2 because now your players are tier 3 or sorry, tier 2, but they're like level 3. Maybe you're going to need to bump that up a little bit, you know what I mean? So things to consider, but that's how you build an encounter. It takes no time at all. That's how you break down adversaries, and again, takes no time at all. And I love that. So I hope that helped. I hope that was informative and kind of streamlines the process for you. So when you get into it, you kind of already have that kind of confidence going in that you don't really need to worry about how you build out the size, because in the end, if all you did was make it make sense, your party's going to do the rest. And because let's face it, your party's going to probably just kill off your encounter before it even gets to the point of being climactic. They're going to be systematically taking your guys down, and you're just going to be like, well, shoot. And you almost have to plug in more guys just to make it work. So just saying. In the end, the encounter build is great if you're beginning, and it's great as a frame of reference, but you're going to toss it out in the end, and you're going to just create with what makes sense in your world and within that contextual moment. So yeah, there it is, though. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you think. I really do want to know what you guys think about these videos, whether you like them, whether you hate them, whatever. I don't care. Let me know. I want all the feedback in the world, okay? But give us a subscribe, give us a like. That's the freest thing you can do. Helps us out, and we're trying to get to 75 subscribers by the end of November. So, we're on track, and we want to get there. Check out Miss Atoldif. That's our Daggerheart actual play we're running right now. We kind of had a long night the first session, which became the 3 episodes. So, we got a little loopy at the end. But we're going to be doing our second one here in the beginning of November. So stay tuned for that. Join us on Twitch, because we definitely stream on Twitch, and then we post a little bit later to YouTube, per the usual. So check us out there, and you'll get to see it right away. So we do have our TikTok and social medias out there for pretty much everything. So join us there. We post all of our live streams and when it's going to be 3 days prior and then the day of. So look for that, guys. But in the meantime, I will see you in the next one. Keep that shield wall strong.